A lot of people are missing out on some great quality information that you can get from watching Warhammer 40,000 videos on YouTube. So today I'm going to give you a full guide on exactly how to learn. This is going to make your game so much better. You're going to learn strategy, tactics, everything else. But first off, we got to learn how to do it. So what exactly is YouTube good for when we're trying to learn the game of Warhammer 40,000? Well, it's fantastic for explaining complicated concepts, breaking down entire paragraphs. So I know many people still screw up the fight phase. They still don't understand that the fight phase for each individual unit starts with the pylon action. This causes a lot of confusion on how to get around the fights first, stuff like that. For example, this is something that YouTube is fantastic for when you're trying to learn some of these more advanced concepts in the game. Identifying where rules are along with rules interactions. So there's a lot of confusing aspects. Many people have heard about the rules commentary or the mission approved or the chapter approved. Like, for example, right now we are currently in Pariah Nexus, which has a different rule set than Leviathan had. So sometimes it's hard to know where certain rules are. And YouTube can be very beneficial for this because YouTubers like myself, we can help point you towards where to look these rules up. Keeping you up to date with implementation. The actual physical core rulebook is almost obsolete like day 2 of the edition because we're constantly giving balance data slate updates. These are all available. All these resources, by the way, are 100% free and available for you on warhammercommunity.com. But it can be hard to like wrap it around and implement it all together if you're not engrossed in this world, and that's what people like myself are really good for helping with. Now, here's the deal, guys. We don't invalidate the rulebook, the commentary, and the mission pack, though. So you definitely still need to read the core rules. It's actually not really that long. If you haven't read the core rules and you're just trying to learn from YouTube, I do recommend make sure that you go through all of these documents, and then you can come back to us and we can kind of help you like reference the parts that you need to reference. All right, what is the point of this video, though? This video, Warhammer 40,000 is a massive game with deep rules, endless lore, complex strategies, and it's an amazing way to learn by using YouTube, but watching videos just isn't enough. You're actually going to need to learn the correct way to actually improve your game. So I'm going to tell you how to maximize all the information you're going to get away from every other YouTube video in the future that you're going to watch on Warhammer 40,000. So how to actively learn instead of just watching, how to apply what you're learning instead of just getting stuck in a very specific example. And I'm also going to give you different recommended types of content to watch. Now, tons of people will watch just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of content, but they're struggling to improve in the actual game because they're not realizing how to actually utilize the information, and that's what we're solving today. So, guys, there's different types of YouTube content out there. You've got battle reports. These are awesome. One, they can be just super entertaining, but two, they can be great for seeing armies in action, how they actually apply on the battlefield. But listen, guys, don't just copy what they do. You have to analyze why certain moves are being made by the people who are playing. So I see people on battle reports all the time just do really dumb things. So you can't just like watch what people are doing because they slap the battle report up and think, oh, okay, well, this is what I should do. It really doesn't work that way. There are some very, very popular YouTube channels out there, way, way bigger than mine will ever be. And they just do constant really bad things on screen that if you emulate what they're doing, you're going to be really bad at the game as well. So I don't necessarily recommend just watching battle reports and thinking that that's going to make you a good player. But if you're watching battle reports and you're kind of analyzing how they're moving and you're thinking about, oh, well, if they had done X instead of Y while they were on screen, then that could have been massively improving for the game. Then you can get a lot of away from battle reports. What about videos that do like rules and mechanics explainers? These things are perfect for learning basics, but you guys, you can't stop at memorization. You have to test out some of the things that you learn in these videos, and you gotta feel them out for yourself. So I do a ton of rules and mechanics explainers videos where I will say, hey, this is how fights first works, right? This is how the pylon activation works. But then what you need to do is you need to actually apply the information that you learn so that you can deep seat it in your mind and you can understand when utilizing that information is going to be useful for your gameplay. Tactical and strategy games. This is another massive part of what I do, and I like to think I do a pretty good job of it. So this is fantastic for your deep learning, but you always have to ask, how does it apply to my army and my playstyle? One of the most common comments that I will get on videos is like, yeah, but what do I do when I play Adeptus Custodes and I don't have infiltrators? Well, the reality is sometimes maybe this video just doesn't apply to you because you don't have infiltrators. Like, if you don't have infiltrators, how can you use infiltrators in an army that does infiltrators, right? So some videos, even though they can be a really, really deep, in-depth, strategy breakdown, don't necessarily apply to every single scenario in the game, and that's okay. Then we'll have videos that do like army list breakdowns and meta discussions, and this is great for understanding competitive play, but you got to really be adaptable. The meta is constantly shifting, and the meta is also like a terminology that people just really use incorrectly. What does meta actually mean, for example? Well, it pretty much just means whatever the heck is popular right now. A meta army list, for example, is just a army list that has repeatedly done well. It typically means that, generally speaking, when we call something meta, it means that it's good. But does that mean it's the best? No. Does that mean that it is unbeatable? Absolutely not. It just means what is popular being played right now that many people are likely to run into, so they're going to have to prepare for. Then you have hobby and painting videos, which are great, but that has nothing to do with kind of what we're talking about right now, because we're actually trying to learn the game. All right, here we go. You got to learn what you are learning. So if you're watching a video on deployment, for example, what I want you to do is I want you to pay attention to learning deployment. If I'm doing video on deployment, occasionally what's going to happen is I'm going to pick up a unit and I'm just going to put them in a position on the table so I can show you how, for example, I am like screening with infiltrators. But that doesn't mean that the infiltrators could actually move the 20 inches across the table when I move them. So don't get lost in like, oh, how did he move his infantry 20 inches across the table? I couldn't. It was impossible. That's not what I was teaching. What I was teaching was, hey, if we put our infiltrators in this particular position, then your opponent can't move through them or whatever. So learn what you are actually learning. If you're watching a video on deployment, let's say, is it general deployment or is it a specific army's deployment? So for example, if I am teaching deployment for Imperial Guard, how do I set up a gun line? Well, that is how I set up a gun line. That is not how I'm going to be deploying, I don't know, like a melee pressure list, right? So do not try to apply the information that you've learned from how to set up your gun line into how to set up a, melee pressure army, unless you're a little bit more advanced and you can like kind of extrapolate that for yourself. But that can be really challenging. So basically, what I really want you to do is I want you to learn what you are learning. It is really important, and don't get lost in the minutia of the videos. Think about the purpose of what you're learning, and think about the purpose of what the video is, and try to apply that in that niche scenario. Okay, active learning. How to apply what you actually watch. This is really, really important. First thing that I want you to do when you're watching a video, I need you to take notes. It doesn't mean that you have to get your whole notepad and blah, 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 but jot down the key concepts, the tactics, or the rules that really stand out to you, okay? If you are learning how to avoid a fight first, for example, how do I charge a unit that has the fights first ability without allowing them fights first? Well, write down notes. You know for a fact that you can't just charge them, because if you do, they're going to fight first and kill you. But now we also know maybe we can charge a unit next to them and then pile into them. Okay, cool. So you get to write that concept down, and then you can apply that in other scenarios later down the line as well. Perhaps you're trying to get engaged with a unit that is too far away for you to charge. So you charge a closer unit and then pile in into the unit that was further away. That's the same concept that we were teaching when we were teaching how to get around a fights first ability. So you can extrapolate that information and apply it to different things. But I need you to take notes and really analyze them so that you can apply them to your games as well. Pausing and thinking. When you're watching a battle report, this is battle report specific, I want you to go, just pause the screen every now and then and say, hey, what would I do in this situation? So if you're seeing, I don't know, say you're watching mini wargaming and one of the guys out there is like, aha, I'm just going to move my guys out and I'm going to shoot the unit that I want to charge. Well, is that smart? Like, okay, I know that they are popular and they've got lots of subscribers, and you see them on they're fun guys, and they make jokes and they're really cool people. But does it actually make sense that you're going to shoot the unit that you're about to charge? No, it really doesn't, because you're in a lot of scenarios, because your opponent's just going to take the models away, which is going to make the charge longer. So what was the actual goal that they were trying to accomplish? Were they trying to charge the unit, or were they trying to shoot the unit? So ask yourself these questions, like, was that really the smartest decision? When you analyze videos like that, you're going to get a lot more out of them, even if you're just watching it for fun. I'll watch battle reports for fun. I watch mini wargaming. I watch Play on Tabletop. I watch these guys. I think they're fun. I really enjoy it. But what I'll do when I watch them, a lot of times I just ask myself, like, well, that was a really bad decision, right? So what could I have done differently, even if I was using a bad army like they have, or a weak army like they have? What could I have done differently to make it so that I would have succeeded in this situation where the person who's piloting the army did not? It's a really good idea. Practicing with a friend. Realistically, you need to try out these tactics and strategies, especially the stuff that I teach on this channel, guys. If I'm teaching how to counteract a fights first, or if I'm teaching how to specifically deal with the Silent King, what I want you to do is just get your buddy, practice it, see if it works. right? If I'm teaching you a new cool tactic, hey, we're going to deep strike Reavers, and they're led by the Phobos Lieutenant. So they're going to shoot, and they're going to move D6 inches, and then they're going to charge in. So it's like a 6-inch charge instead of a 9-inch deep strike charge. Well, try that tactic out with your friend. You don't even have to play an entire game to do it. Just try the tactic out and see if it works for you. Modify concepts for your army. If a strategy works really, really well for Space Marines, how does it work for Tyranids, for example? Well, I don't have scouts in Tyranids, so I don't have a unit that infiltrates and scout moves, but I've got units that scout really far, and I've definitely got units that infiltrate. So can I apply tactics that were made for Space Marines and apply them to Tyranids? Well, in many scenarios, you really, really can. And then you really want to be utilizing real game scenarios, okay? So instead of just memorizing examples, I want you to think about how concepts apply in different matchups and in different missions. So how would I describe this? So for example, okay, I just recently did a video on how to deal with Slanesh, right? So I had an impulsor that was in the middle that was full of like some Blade Guard veterans that my Slanesh Demon's opponent wanted to really charge and kill all the Blade Guard veterans. But since they're an impulsor, how are they going to kill them? So what I did is I parked the impulsor next to some pieces of terrain, which made it very, very hard, nigh impossible for them to actually surround the impulsor. Well, how do you apply that in an army that doesn't have an impulsor? Well, you can do the same things with trucks. How do you create that scenario if there's no terrain around? Well, what if you put like 3 transports right next to each other? And they made them like tip to tip so that none of them could actually be surrounded. So you can actually utilize the information I taught in that video on how to use the terrain to block your opponent and create your own pseudo terrain just by having multiple transports together if you're playing something like orcs, for example. So you can apply these things. All right, common pitfalls, and these are things that we really, really need to avoid. Hold on for a second, sorry. This is, I just got to adjust this so that you guys can read all the type. There we go. Only watching, not playing. This is a mistake that people make all the freaking time. They watch without playing, and it makes it really hard for them to internalize concepts. You need to get models on the table, or like on TTS, for example, and that is how you're going to be more successful, right? Just do it. You got to get reps. All right, blindly copying lists and tactics. I talk about this all the freaking time, guys. Just because some really great player, I'm going to use Brian Sipey as an example. Brian is a friend. He's a fantastic player, and I love the work that he does. But the list that he runs many times just don't work for other people because Brian plays them in a very specific way. If you want to play Brian's list or anyone's list, really, you need to understand how they run it. That's why what I'll do is I'll put out videos on how my list operates. So I have like a 30-minute video on how the Bloody Road, which is my take on Blood Angels, operates. The reason why I made that video for you guys is that if you just run my list, you're going to do pretty bad with it. But if you run it the way that I tell you to run it, you're going to crush souls and people are going to just have absolute nightmares from playing you because it's an amazing list when it's run in a very specific way. So you can't just copy a list and copy a tactic if you don't understand the scenarios and you don't understand everything that goes into running that list. Getting stuck in outdated information. Listen, Warhammer 40k rules are evolving all the time. It does make the game complicated. Let's be very clear. It makes the game quite complicated. So you really do need to check the videos that you're watching. Is it based off of like the latest edition, the latest FAQ? Because if it's not, then sometimes you have to take things with a grain of salt, right? So if I'll tell you, I'll give you an example. I have a video out on how to beat Necrons. It's actually a very good video, and it still applies like 95% today, even though we're like 8 FAQs after the Necrons book has been released. But there are some things that have changed, right? So for example, you can't do certain things with a Satan that you could do previously. So you got to take some of the information on older videos with a grain of salt, which is one of the reasons why YouTubers like myself, we always just pump out fresh information. One, it's for our careers, it's for our pocketbooks and everything, but two, it really is for you guys. So if we create a new guide that we made in the past, you probably should watch it because the information has been updated. All right, ignoring core concepts in favor of meta trains. Listen, you got to learn fundamentals, which is movement, positioning, objectives. It's much more important than just following the meta. There's a really amazing player. His name is Sean Naden. He's the captain of Team America for the WTC team. You guys have probably seen him on a bunch of live streams and stuff. He brings army lists that to the untrained eye just look bad and dumb, but he crushes souls. You know why? Because he doesn't run whatever is the top list that's going around that's doing really well. What he does is he does perfect movement and he does great positioning and he is always scoring his objectives when he can score his objectives and he's always screwing with your movement and your positioning because he understands the fundamentals of the game very, very well. So he can even bring lists that like a lot of people will just say, oh, that's not a good army list, but he can do amazing with them, make it to the finals of LVO, for example, simply because he understands the fundamentals of the game. So learn the fundamentals of this game. And counters to information always exist. Now, this is a really important one that super applies to my channel because I get comments all the time. And let's just address this. If I am teaching a counter, there will be a counter to the counter I'm teaching. I'm aware of that. I know. Sometimes just by forcing your opponent to do the counter is enough to net you a win. So I'll give you an example. One of a very popular video I did is how to defeat fights first. And one of the things that you'll do many times is you will charge a unit next to a fights first unit and then pile into the fights first unit before the fights first unit gets activated. Therefore, navigating and avoiding the fights first ability that unit has. Watch the video. It works. Very, very in-depth and it's extremely well done. But there is a counter to that because your opponent could simply just heroic intervene and then suddenly they'll get to activate their fights first and your whole ability is useless now. Yeah, I'm aware of that. I understand that there are counters to the counter. Now, there's also a counter to that counter, right? But when you force your opponent to actually instigate the counter, guess what happens? Sometimes they mess up, which gives you an opening. And then even if they do activate the counter, let's say they do heroically intervene. Now that means they can't heroically intervene somewhere else. It also means that they're down 1 CP, which means maybe they can't interrupt or maybe they can't armor contempt in a very specific place. So it drains their resources to apply the counter. So you should always counter someone, even if there's a counter to the counter. All right, that was a lot. And then thinking 40k is a game of who rolls better. This is just a terrible, terrible way to think of Warhammer. Most people who think this way are just bad at the game. Now, that doesn't mean they can't have fun. You can have fun and be bad. No problems. Like I hope you have a blast. I hope everyone has fun playing 40k. But if you are a competitive player and you think the game boils down to whose rolls better, you're just not a very good competitive player. I can pretty much guarantee you that. Dice are 100% involved in the game. But what I recommend doing is not thinking of this as a luck game. Oftentimes, you're going to be able to create scenarios that almost exclusive of dice. All right, you're going to be able to create scenarios that can be exclusive of dice and luck. So you can put yourself in a scenario where you get 2 different 2-inch rerollable charges. Now, is it possible to get unlucky enough to fail all of those? Yes, but what is the statistics on that? It's like unheard of, and it just won't happen to you. You're not going to run you're not going to run snake eyes into snake eyes into snake eyes. And of course, someone's going to comment saying, I have rolled snake eyes into snake eyes into snake eyes. Like I said, I'm sure it has happened. But if it's just ordained you lose because of that, okay, I can accept that I'm going to lose a game because of that. But it's just never going to come up as long as you engineer scenarios that are as little reliant on dice as possible. We're closing in on the end here, guys. Not every army can deal with every problem, and this is totally okay. So when you're watching videos and you're identifying a big problem, you're like, well, how would my army deal with that? My army has no counter to that. Guys, this is kind of the truth. The reality is that sometimes when you go to a tournament, if you are faced with this particular scenario, then you could be screwed. And that could be information that can tell you, hey, should I bring the army I want to bring to a tournament? Because if I run into scenario X and I don't have a counter to it, am I just screwed? Well, sometimes you just accept that, right? I've run armies, like when I play Custodes, I understand that if I'm running into Tyranids, I'm on the struggle bus. Tyranids just have a great counter for Custodes. Not so much the dread spam, but let's say we're talking infantry carpet. Tyranids have a great counter into that. Well, yeah, I don't really have a counter to it, and I'm gonna get screwed. So that's just the way it is, right? Let's give another example. Let's talk about jail list. So lists that like have infiltrators and scouts that can move block you so you can't leave your deployment zone. Let's say you're playing against a jail list. One of the best ways to deal with jail lists is just have an infiltrator, which can stop their infiltrators and it can stop their scout moves. No problems. But what if you don't have infiltrator units and you don't have scouts and you don't have fly? Well, the reality is you can get screwed against jail lists in particular. That should make you take a long look at the army list that you're playing and how to counter that big problem. And if you can't counter it, okay, you can't counter that particular problem. There's lots of problems you can't counter. So what channels do I recommend that you guys watch in order to get better at 40k? Well, first off is I definitely recommend my channel. I do everything I can to actually teach you how to do the things other channels talk about. So other channels will talk about. I'll actually give you an example of why I created my channel. I was watching a very popular channel, and they were telling people, oh hey, this what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move block this unit. But what they didn't do is ever teach people what a move block was, how to set it up, or like how to actually do it. So what I did is I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to make a channel and I am going to actually teach people how to do that move block. And so that's how my channel is really born. And it's really grown out. So grown from that, which is really cool. And I'm blessed. And I love having all you guys hanging out and getting better at the game. I get constant feedback. As a matter of fact, we just had one of our happy crumpin guys just went and won a huge GT. So that's really awesome. People are just getting better. And I love hearing that. So that's why I made my channel. So hopefully you're watching this now and you'll continue to watch. And I love and appreciate your support. But Art of War, for example, Art of War is massive. They are a huge channel. They do great work. They are made of some really, really incredible players who are quite good at showing certain things. So in a battle report, for example, they're really good at showing how to make better decisions in game. And they're also good at revealing certain combinations in the game, certain unit combinations and rule combos that can be very powerful. Now, they're not always the best at showing exactly what they're talking about, but they are the first and biggest strategy channel out there for a reason. The guys are really good. I love the insight and actually watching what the guys play. I've played most of them. They're all like super upstanding chaps. So I've got immense amount of respect for the Art of War crew, and I think it's a great channel to watch. There's a lot of faction specialists out there that I highly recommend. I'll give you two examples right now: Black Crow Gaming and Blood Angel Commander. These guys are for their respective armies that they play. Black Crow Gaming is mainly Dark Angels, and Blood Angel Commander is Blood Angel. These guys actually do a really good job of breaking down specific tactics for their armies. If you find a really good faction specialist, definitely pay attention to what they have to say. Now I will want to throw one thing out here. I only recommend channels like this is if they're talking about competitive gaming. There's plenty of faction specialists out there who are not talking about competitive gaming. They're talking about fun gaming or how to make fun lists and stuff. And I don't really recommend watching that stuff unless it's just that you enjoy it. If you enjoy it, watch whatever the hell you like if you're enjoying it. But if you're trying to get better at the game, try to stay away from some of the more casual channels, simply because it's not necessarily going to serve you well. And then for battle reports, guys, this is actually might surprise a lot of people, but Play on Tabletop, they are very entertaining, but they've actually made a really cool push recently where they are trying to make their games much more competitive, and they're trying to make their games much more accurate. And while they're not necessarily the most competitive players, they're not actually very good players. One thing that they do is they are currently utilizing full competitive layouts, which I love for their terrain. It's really, really awesome. And they're making a very strong concerted effort to get all rules correct. And they're really happy to correct themselves when they make mistakes in the rules. So actually, I've got a tremendous amount of respect for them. And if you are a newer player, people like to Play on Tabletop is actually a really good channel to kind of watch. Now, if you're more of an advanced player, you're not going to get much anything away from them outside of the entertainment factor, which, by the way, they film beautiful reports. So I actually do like the entertainment. I do watch it a lot. But I just wanted to give them a shout out here because they were kind of one of the paragons of like casual play. But what they're doing now is they're playing casually, but they're playing correctly. And that is a really big deal. So if you're watching some more casual channels, make sure that they're playing correctly. And Play on Tabletop is making a very concerted effort to ensure that they're playing correctly and that they're teaching the correct things, which I absolutely love. And that's pretty awesome. And there's several other people there, and there's plenty of other people out there. So don't feel bad if I didn't give you a shout out. Like there's lots of great channels out there. These are just some shout outs that I wanted to give out right now. Mini Wargaming. I watch Mini Wargaming. They're fun. I wouldn't ever try to learn from Mini Wargaming outside of if Scary is on. Sometimes when Scary is on, he does a really good job of teaching. But besides that, I wouldn't ever try to learn anything from them. I would just watch it for pure entertainment. And that's how I would treat a lot of 40k YouTube. A lot of 40k YouTube is just there for pure entertainment. And that is not a problem unless you're trying to get better. So if you're trying to get better, stick with the stuff that we've talked about today. So here's a quick recap. Don't just watch, analyze, take notes, and apply what you learn. Experiment with different strategies instead of blindly copying examples. Ask questions. What's the best Warhammer 40k video that helped you learn? This is what I want to do. I want to know in the comments down below right now, what is the best video that any of you guys have seen that have really helped you learn? It doesn't have to be mine. It could be anyone's out there. So I would really just super curious to know. So with that, guys, I love you all, and I hope you all had a freaking great time watching this video. I hope you took notes from this one and that you're going to use it to get yourself better at Warhammer 40,000. So without further ado, bye-bye.